All right. I think we'll get started. The first, while you're eating your stuff to hear for a while, that works out well. But keep in mind as we go through this, if there's any questions you have or any suggestions on a way to do it better, I'm interested in hearing it. We're interested in hearing it. I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you for coming, by the way. This is a little more well-attended than I expected, so this is great. Thank you. Project documentation. By the way, we'll distribute these slides later, and we may not get through everything, so we've ordered it in such a way as the more essential aspects of project documentation. There's some other subjects that can be distributed, followed up on at a later time if we don't get to the contract administration and schedule management and documentation. So we'll see how it goes. So, yeah, jump in anytime if you have any questions. Hit stop. I understand that. Here we go. Basically, there's a few areas that we want to go through here today. Written communications, records of meetings, client, subcontract administration, as we said, and then we want to have an open forum for questions, best practices as you've observed them in the past. Basically, all this information is a summary of presentations that I and others have attended. Some of them are from AGC, the firm of Snell and Wilmer, which is the vast majority of this stuff. Tips from project analysts and Arizona State University's construction management department. So basically, to start, there's two facts of life in the industry. Talk is cheap and paper equals evidence. When you go to an attorney, when you have a dispute in the construction world, the first thing attorneys generally ask contractors is, okay, I hear your problem. Did you document that? And they say it's incredible how often they hear, well, no, this was a conversation over the phone. This was a text message. This was hearsay. This is third, fourth hand. And that won't do. They can try to fight the case for you, but it's not going to go anywhere. The next slide, documentation is simply a mindset. That's all it is. There's no such thing as too much written communication on projects. And the simple fact is we should be, if we're employing best practices, record all important interactions on a project, conversations, meetings, and so forth. Anything from a formal meeting with another party all the way to a face-to-face meeting with a sub about simply getting it together and stepping up on the project. If you have a conversation, document it. Shoot him an email. Send him a letter if it's necessary, but probably not because email's so quick and easy to use. Not take advantage of the community software. What's amazing, what the difference is, how this can make a big difference. There's two essential takeaways from this today. If you learn nothing else, it's simply the fact that it's the best way documentation is in keeping a record to resolve conflicts before they escalate, and you just need to assume that written communication is the only way to protect the legal. There are other ways, but just act as though it is, and that's best practice. It'll help make things convenient in a claim situation, and it will also, most of the time, if employed properly, prevent claim issues from even arising. And we'll get into the details of why a little later. So we'll start with written communication, and just kind of a quick observation about the modern workplace. Often, because when people put things in writing, something really unique happens with a lot of us. Because of a common education and upbringing that we all have, our minds are wired to think of things like introductions, supporting arguments, closing summaries, things of that nature. We ask ourselves, okay, why am I doing this? Maybe not actually ask ourselves, but really it's going on. What's the point that I'm trying to make? What am I asking for? Am I asking for information, permission, direction? Or am I simply informing something of something they need to know? And because of this, we're essentially forced to think these issues through, to make sense of them in a way that the recipient can understand in the form of a cogent argument. What this results in is clear, effective communication, number one. And number two, a record of the facts. An interpersonal conversation, at best, can be misinterpreted, misconstrued, or misunderstood. That's So, and at worst, can be manipulated and adjusted to a suit for selfish purposes or simply ignored. So, when you're starting to write, as you see here, you can ask yourself these questions. It really helps form the argument in your head that you're about to make. And attorneys advise taking, these are things we all know, but just taking a step back and thinking these things through first. On the next slide, we're going to talk about notice. So we're going in order of the different kinds of written communication on a project, in order of least frequent yet most powerful to most frequent, which is email, and least powerful in an argument in a claim situation. So with notice, simply what is notice? Kind of a, I think we know what it is, we probably know what it is. The formal definition is formal transmission and receipt of papers that provide specific information on affairs. That's a long-winded answer, but if you think about what that is, in the exhibit that I passed out, we'll just have in a moment, you'll see how we should formal to pack the most money for the company benefit. Second question that they have is, when is notice required? That tends to come up a lot and be a problem. And the answer is simply two parts. Whenever it's required by the contract. If it doesn't say in the contract, the best practice is within 14 calendar days at the latest of the critical event. So the sooner the better. If something happens, go ahead and issue notice the next day. If you can't, or you need more information, wait a little bit, but not too late. Best practice, 14 calendar days maximum. What goes into a notice? What's the content? Well, use a heading and just basically state it out. Notice of whatever. Breach of contract, owner caused delay, interference in means and methods, whatever it is. Just use the word notice of, put it in bold, say it loud, say it proud, make sure that they understand they're receiving the formal contractual notice. Restate the problem in greater detail. So you've said what they're not doing, but then go into the details of why that's a problem. I know it's obvious, but that's the whole point of documentation, is sometimes we have to restate the obvious. State the consequences if the remedy of the problem is not provided in a certain time period. So if you're warning them, and we'll see a warning example in this letter, make sure they know, if I don't have resolution of this by whenever, this is the consequence to the project. It simply closes you at any formal letter. So if we take a look at this sample right here, we don't need to read it through, but this is, I put it on our letterhead. This is a piecing together of wording that construction attorneys and other experts recommend we use. So again, you've got the bold notice of owner caused delay in the situation. You explain why in the body of what's going on, because of a lack of complete design, because of a lack of owner-furnished material. We're hereby notifying you, the owner, that unless this happens, and in the bracket language is an example to use if you're warning them. It's a notice of consequence if this doesn't happen. But your warnings can also come in formal letters, which we'll talk about later. That's fine. But the notice has to happen. If it's not in brackets, if it's already too late, just past the fact that there is a delay, they have to be notified very quickly. And then in the middle, underline, use that formal language that spells it out, so you can see it's clear. Epsilon Energy Corporation made that up. I don't know, Dave, maybe there is an Epsilon. Project mechanical and final completion dates will be delayed, or even are delayed. And this delay is owner caused. Again, well actually, not again, I haven't said it yet. When you say delay in written communication, you never say just delay. It's always owner caused delay. If you say just delay, it's open to interpretation in the courts. It's open to interpretation in the, well, okay, there was a delay, who owns this? use this documentation as a weapon for the company and for you, and be aggressive in your work. And then finally, the last paragraph, positive spin. We're eager to proactively assist you in any way we can to prevent this occurring if it's a warning, or in resolving, if it already has occurred, in resolving the factors that influence the delay in the first place. What that does is it lets the courts know, and we'll get to this, when you're writing, always assume that the judge will see anything you write, whether it's an email, whether it's a letter, whether it's notice. Or we have an audience. We have two audiences. We have the client or the sub if you're doing notice to the subcontractor, for example. And then we have the legal people who actually rule in the case of a dispute. So we need to be thinking about what they're reading too. And if we are saying, hey, here's your problem, you own it, but let us know how we can help. We want to resolve this. We want to fix it. We want to finish the job on time. We want to help you. That makes us look very good in the eyes of the courts. So that's just an example of some wording that you might consider using going forward. Timing. Again, I think we've already talked about that, Michelle, sorry.
Mike,
So,
can I
yes.
Interject? If I understand it correctly, because there are some differences on different contracts on written notice requirements stage, who they go to, that we have that as a checklist item, if you will, at the kickoff meetings. I just didn't talk about doing that, and if we haven't, we really should. And then you remind
I think it notice requirements, but we might just make extra sure that it's not only time requirements, but specifically spell out the amount of time.
Yeah.
We have that. And sometimes it's 3 days. Sometimes it's 30 days. But best practice, 14 days fewer. That's for you know. Let's talk. Did we skip ahead? Nope. So the next kind, you've got your informal letters or emails. Again, I know you know this, but this is just some interesting stuff. It's all for the second party who's reading. So it sounds like we know what we're talking about and how to write a letter and that sort of thing. Informal, best used with the on-site staff that you know well, that you've met, you're communicating with them regularly. Let's say we got a guy named Jose Fernandez. He's the contract manager for our energy company. And hey, Jose, I wanted to let you know, whatever your message is, closing, regards, best, thanks, whatever. I mean, with a formal way and very simple. People you've not met, writing to you for the first time, dear Mr. Fernandez, I'm ready to inform you, sincerely yours, respectfully, your full name and your title. Not a big deal, just something that's, dotting I's and crossing T's, keep in mind. Formal letters can also be very effectively used to give, as I said earlier, give a warning, inform. It's not quite serious yet, but you should know that. Feel free to write those as often as you can. But just remember that there is an order to these things as far as how much weight the communication has. To repeat, the notice is the heaviest weight, followed by a formal letter, followed by an informal letter, followed by an email. Email is better than nothing. In fact, anything written is admissible in court. Text messages are not considered written communication. So just keep that in mind. One more thing before we move on to meetings. Some of this stuff, we're a client-oriented organization. We don't have good relations with the people we work with. And in some cases, before a critical issue arises, they've had a nice interaction with these people. And it might be a little uncomfortable to issue a formal notice or letter warning of these significant consequences. The thing that we need to remember, and if they have a problem with it, like, oh, gee, what happened? I thought we were on good terms. Let the customer know, part of our job at Bodell is, first of all, we have to follow the contract. It's our first duty. Secondly, it's our duty to keep you informed of what's going on in the project, and this is one way that we do that. And I feel I owe it to you, the benefit of the project, to make these issues known to everybody and making it on the record. Let's talk about the record for a minute. And when it comes to meetings, for example, which is the primary concern we have here, when do we determine if something needs to go on the record? It's beyond a conversation. Basically, Michelle, if it relates to money, time spent for individual and company assignments that are made at a meeting, for example, a project coordination meeting, it needs to go on the record. It shouldn't be, oh, yeah, I caught that, I heard that. It needs to be documented. We've already talked about the strength of different communications. So, let's go to owner meetings. Meeting minutes. Minutes need to be kept at every single meeting we have with owners or key vendors. It doesn't matter if it's outside, offsite, in person, via teleconference. Someone's got to keep the written record, usually in the form of minutes. So then the question becomes, well, who takes care of it? The contracts, not all the time, but often they'll indicate who's supposed to keep minutes. If the owner or the construction manager or engineer keeps the minutes by contract, that is not necessarily the end of the world. Go ahead and let them run the agenda and keep the minutes, but keep your own notes as well. Ask for the minutes promptly after the meeting. Point out inaccuracies that are in the record if you see them. And make sure that they're corrected and redistributed. If the owner fails to do this, offer to take over the responsibility for them, which is one less thing they have to do. If they don't want to give that up, that's fine. Here's what we do. We keep our own minutes, and we copy them on them to collaborate or coordinate to make sure that the record is the same on both sides. Look at it as a service we're providing to them.
And Mike, it's better also if you're asking for corrections in the email, in the minutes, to email them rather than ask verbally, because
Right.
later that's a point of contention. You have a written record.
Written record with an email saying we disputed this topic, and the proper way to handle that is if there's, say, during a coordination meeting, there's a specific dispute over a dispute. That portion of the minutes will indicate that this contractor, whether it's a subcontractor or whomever, has a dispute of the record with this party, and here's what both sides say, and it's to be resolved. And it stays on there until it is. That way it's noted that that is a dispute.
Now these meeting minutes are, unless I'm in the dark here, typically transmitted emails.
Yes, which is fine. But you just have to, again, review them. And they should be distributed by whoever the minute taker is within a few hours. If it's 2 days later, they're not keeping the minutes correctly. It needs to go out quickly because people, our minds, we lose our memory of what commitments were made and agreements were made. And a conflict needs to be noted quickly if there is one. Now, one of the great things about doing this is if the minutes have a disclaimer at the bottom that if a response is not made to these minutes within 24 hours, it will be assumed by all parties that this is an accurate record of the meeting as it transpired. It's a very powerful tool in a claim situation. Just something to note on minutes. Unprincipled owners who elect to keep minutes are notorious for being lax about accuracy, timely distribution, or follow through. So for this reason, it's strongly suggested by most legal counsel in the construction industry that the contractors push to take on this role. If, again, if we don't officially have it and the owner wants to retain it, keep a secondary record and share it with them and all the other parties. Be transparent. No one can reasonably object to this. There's no legal stance for saying, oh, well, the contract said we keep the minutes, and they started doing it. No one's going to find you and breach the contract for that. We talked about disputing it. So on the next slide, this is a quote that I found to be really hit me, and it's very true. And Merrill can attest to this. The minutes that support one's position are like having air superiority during the war. And any weapons we have at our side are very useful, and this is huge. But this isn't just in a dispute. This is preventing a dispute. The attorneys say that we, by our nature, providing the service we provide, have a tendency to want to complete things, move it forward, get the project done. If we control the minutes, we have a significant advantage in just preventing conflict anyway by just having the accurate records. We want to deliver materials. We want to install them. We want to protect work. And this is a huge benefit to us if we follow through with it. So, kind of went over this before, but what if, a question might be that some of you have, what if the client or the construction manager, whoever it is, don't like all this written communication? You don't send me all these emails. Don't copy me on your minutes. What do you do? The answer is simple. In general, it's the unaccountable or people with questionable ethics who strongly object to frequent, effective documentation. If they object, just do it anyway. Nobody, it will never have faults found with you mangling that.
I find those are the type of people that are the only ones you need to be afraid of. Them are the ones you need to be documenting.
Exactly.
Them are the ones you need to be
huge red flag.
sending them to.
If they say, wait a minute, what's this? Big red flag. So let's just talk about these brief tips on written communication. These are just some quick hits. And again, you'll get this list. Write all formal communication as though the recipients weren't experts in their field, even though they are, and we know they are, because you need to remember who the potential audience is. And they don't necessarily know what a PO is, what certain abbreviations or jargon that we have a tendency to use in the industry. We want to make the communication clear. We also want it to be professional, so don't say anything you wouldn't want the judge or jury to see. If in doubt, send an email, as I said earlier. Footnote confirming a meeting, an appointment, even though it was verbal. If you feel like a subcontractor or vendor, that sort of thing as a reminder. Merrill wanted me to talk about employees keeping emails for particular projects in separate files. Take advantage of the Outlook system for creating different folders and subfolders and sub-subfolders within a project or a particular subject.
And we will be having another one of the Lunch and Learns to go over that. If you're not familiar with how to make folders or how to move things around in Outlook, we'll be having one, like I said, it'll probably be a quicker one, not as formal as this one, just to show you guys that, give you some pointers on how to do things easier in Outlook.
Several reasons for that may not be apparent, but one of the most important is that if we are in a claim situation, it makes life a lot easier for the claim manager to dig up to do the research to back up our assertion. Very helpful. So, number 5, this is an interesting story, they said. So, apparently, once upon a time, there was a project where an engineer and a construction manager, GC, were communicating via email. And the contractor said to him, hey, when is this design going to be finished? Why aren't you, providing these specifications and this answer? And the response the engineer gave was, hey, we're making a lot of money re-engineering this project and taking advantage of the situation. You're making a ton of money on changeovers, T&M work. Churn, baby, churn. This is the way. This is great. Well, they both deleted that email. 3 years later, during the document discovery period, that email was found. No email you delete ever disappears, ever. So just assume that if you've sent it, it's in the record forever. just be careful about that. We often hear stories about reply to all. Don't hit reply to all. Well, if you're saying nasty things about someone and you hit reply to all, yeah, that's a problem. But when it comes to communicating issues in the project site, go ahead and reply to everybody. It disseminates the information, and one of the best reasons to do it is it prevents people from claiming ignorance in a meeting or in a claim situation. Copy the home office contract administrators on all these topics so that they can file these things away in the general drive. Our company, for example, so it's on the record. Management can see what's going on and just be ahead of the game by trying to speed through these a little more. Have easy access to the copies of the contract documents and other relevant documents on your phone, on your tablet, whatever. How often have we come up with an issue and we're traveling, we're at the airport, we're headed somewhere, oh, I could deal with this right now. Oh, yeah, this is a contract. I guess I'll have to wait to do this when I get back in the office or when I get to a place where someone can email me. Have quick access to the general contract at all times. Technology. There's just no excuse to not do this documentation, to provide timely notice, to record meetings. We've got apps that record stuff for us. We have note takers. We have all kinds of tools. Take advantage of them. Use them to your advantage. Next one, if the superintendent keeps minutes in a situation because the PM's not there or the project doesn't have a PA or for whatever reason, and he's just really busy, have him quickly distribute, send those notes into the home office, and have somebody transcribe. For example, if he recorded the meeting, and distribute, so he can achieve these goals but not be burdened down with some of the formalities. Yeah, home office, keep a copy of the record. Be consistent in documentation throughout the project and across all projects and clients. Not special. I don't think so. Don't wait until it's a crisis. Letters, notices, meeting minutes, just copy the operations manager on the distribution. Keep them up to speed. Make sure they know what's going on. And then these last two, a lot of this material, it doesn't seem too exciting. I realize it's kind of a pain in a way to document, but it's really important to be diligent. Don't try to be, do your best. Don't expect perfection. Just try to be consistent. Store it, back it up, distribute it. And then finally, just make sure you run spell check with everything so that we look like the kind of company that we tell people we are. And be clear in the communication. And that's written communication. There's a few other parts, but I want to hit pause for a second and see what questions you have, comments, concerns.
So, in a lot of cases, when we're current projects, so to speak, we may not be corresponding directly with the owner. We may be corresponding with the contract manager or engineering group acting as contract manager. Are there any recommendations in addressing owner-caused issues through the construction manager?
As I recall, they do break out the terms in that contract only with the construction managers that who we are taking direction from. With
Bowers and Kubota, for example, they are designated the owner's designee or construction manager, I believe, in the AIA form.
I think the advice we get would be direct the communication to our official point of contact, but if it's a topic that particularly pertains, for example, payment or something, or to the actual owner, the end user, and you have access to them, their email address, for example, you can go ahead and copy them.
Motley Corp, for example, we didn't have direct contact with the owner until 3/4 of the way through the project. So, that was the Eichly interaction. They're switching gears slightly. In my case, and even Blaine's case, the construction manager is also the engineer. So is the advice to be careful on how we indicate a delay? Should we say CM caused delay or engineer caused delay or delay but not ours?
That's an interesting question, but I haven't thought about that. So you can say engineer caused delay, but as far as we're concerned, contractually, most of the time, it's an owner caused delay because I would say the engineer is their agent. They're responsible. The owner, we don't have a relationship with the engineer. I think that's where you can clarify your work. For example, this is an owner caused delay. We have not received the electrical drawings from the engineer. Period.
Now that you say that kind of makes
or an owner-owned delay?
yeah, well, contractual privity, the relationships, as far as in the communications for Bodell Construction is concerned, this is an owner-caused delay. It might actually be someone else's delay, but that's for the relationship between the owner and that other party to deal with. So really, contractual privity, it may not be technically owner delay, but as far as we're concerned, that's who we're contracted with. So it's probably the same with the CM engineer.
Sure.
And you would probably use the term.
I would think in Blaine's situation, if he had to do it, and it was the engineer caused delay, the way the contract reads again is I think where it goes, where Samuel Engineering is the contractor, the subcontractor, so I would call it a contractor caused delay.
They're actually probably in the material. They are the owner.
That's right.
Our contract's with them.
When it says subcontractor in that contract, it's referring to us as a contractor engineers. So that's right. Good question.
Well, and then you get into it too, and like up at Central Weber, where Montgomery Watson was the engineer and Montgomery Constructors was the general contractor. So it was kind of fun to badmouth the engineers to the engineer.
A lot of times, too, when you're in that first meeting and you're kind of getting everybody's footing the way it should be, one of the questions should be asked is just that, is, you know, we have our contract documentation that we send delays to this person or to this entity. Is there anybody else that we need to send it to? Or who do we need to contact and get those contacts immediately and create them as part of the record?
One more thing I forgot to mention, sorry, a couple pages back. You don't need to go back there to show, but when it comes to trying to recover a schedule, it's important. This is a narrow weight note. Don't list specific dates or number of days the delay is causing in writing. Only refer to that sort of thing verbally. The reason is if we tie ourselves down in the claim situation, we limit our recovery period, and that can cause a lot of trouble if it's ruled that you're entitled to recover your delay costs for a certain number of days, because often arbitrators will try to split down the line. They want that reputation of fairness, and so they, even if it's clear that one party is right and the other isn't, they'll still usually be around 50-50. So sometimes there might be a list of claims and issues, and I'm going to throw this out, I'm going to throw that out. But I am going to enforce this, and if it just keeps us tied down to a certain number of days, then it limits, again, the claims, the dollar claim recovery potential.
But what if that is the basis of the claim, is that we're going after, say, amount of days of general conditions, and that's the basis of the claim. You've got, that's a schedule.
The recommendation is in the written record, the official written record should just make reference to a generic delay that's owner. And again, remember, owner. If you're wording it and it just sounds awkward to keep saying owner caused delay, drop it for one sentence, but then bring it back. I mean, you know, hit that drum, but the advice I've been given is be as vague on the specifics as possible. Refer to the schedule that's approved and that is made official once the change order is signed and made official as well. And then the schedule will say August 18th. That's the recommendation. You may not be able to get around that, so you'll say, hey, how come you don't put August 18th in there? Do your best. But
I'm just recalling a current letter that's got quantity of days in it.
that's true. That's true.
And little bit on the not get too hung up on the semantics, but if you're not sure about responsibility, it's just the same thing that would seem to be if you say, we are incurring a delay that is beyond our control and not our responsibility. So it has the same effect. I mean, in other words, if you're not sure whose fault it is, or you kind of want to put, you know, the big thing is letting them say, hey, we're delayed and it's not our fault.
Best to explain why and prove it. But,
Yes.
But yeah, definitely make your assertion. That is the important thing. Definitely. Anything else?
Not to sidetrack anything, but I mean this is an after discussion. But the AIA document, the contract we signed with HFSC, does not designate Bowers and Kubota as the owner's representative. It's blank in this version, the signed version.
Aha. Well,
There's that vague stuff again.
And then that's meeting minutes. So there's a question that you ask, there's a question that gets answered, and then it gets bound contractually by those meeting minutes for their instruction.
even though some of these things may seem obvious, like, well, we're working with Bowers and Kubota, so clearly I would address it there. What does the contract say? If it doesn't make mention of B&K, we should ask the owner for direction. There's your level of requesting direction for information. Who should this go to? And what is the change order that's going to change the contractual language going to be made? I know that seems very proper and very orderly, but that's where you get into trouble because people will hang you on that day in and day out for just not checking those kinds of details. As I understand it.
Well, before it sounds like you're going into the tips about. I just like that with many of you. Some of you have heard this several times from me, but the written notice, failure to give adequate written notices. I'd be embarrassed to tell you how many millions of dollars over a 3-year period in some of our darker days it cost us because we didn't have written notice. We went through the claims process. It's typically with private developers who are less than honest, that are trying to take our money. But the fact is, through the process, it was recommended for us to drop the claim. And in 3 instances, well, I'll tell you, one of them was $5 million. One letter, and I call it the $1 million letter. It was literally a $5 million letter that we did not write, and it cost us that kind of money. That's a very dramatic example with a very, very difficult project that we had problems from our management on also, but I just can't overemphasize. And so, and I think I tend not to want to take time to do a lot of, old school, not a lot of paperwork, but I would have to say generally it's better to get a bad letter written than no letter. Well, I would say generally, I'd say for sure. If you don't know everything, and you're not quite sure what happened, you don't have to be a genius attorney or engineer, and you just get a note and get it down. Hey, we got a delay because the electrical lines aren't complete, period. You don't have to sit necessarily and try to make it more complicated than it is.
$1 million email and letter, and then we have $700,000 meeting minute, lack of meeting minutes from the owner promising, oh yeah, we've got that covered, we'll pay for those guys. You don't need to worry about this. You go back in the claim, well, you said, no, I didn't. Where did I say that? Can't believe it. It's gone. Too bad. Before we continue, are you guys good to finish this out? It's only a couple pages longer. I didn't know what other questions you have, and I do want you to be able to eat. Of course you have been.
You're the only one.
I'm the only one that has been. All right, part 3, client contract and subcontract administration. The PM and superintendent need to make a list of precisely who has the authority to authorize a change in the scope of employment. Oh, up here. Let's see, make sure I'm not contract. Yeah. So we've got a general contract. We're starting a job. We have all kinds of requirements that we have to do. We have the due dates. We have when submittals are supposed to be processed. We have when billings are supposed to be done. It's effective to quickly study all the client contracts as quick as possible after award and review the notes from staff that have pre-screened the contracts. Usually Cray and I do most of them, but we'll involve others as needed. Just take those notes into consideration if there's something we didn't strike or couldn't strike if the government contract, and we just highlight it to be aware of it. We have deliverables, that's where I was going, that are mandated by the contract when certain things are due. What's important is to list these procedural deliverables out and the timing requirements and load them on the contract manager Outlook to remind yourself, both PM and contract administration, to remind the PM, there's a lot of dynamic things are going on during the job, of that deliverable coming due, billing, when the schedules need to be submitted, when notice of substantial completion in Hawaii, for example, needs to be published in a local newspaper, things of that nature. It makes life a lot easier to comply with the contract. Why? For compliance sake, for efficacy, but also, again, if we get into a dispute, nobody can accuse us of breach of contract for not following contractual procedure. It doesn't have anything to do with the dispute at hand, maybe, but if we didn't do it, that's just taking another arrow out of their quiver and saying, well, you didn't follow the contract. You didn't turn your billings in on time, even if that's not the dispute. And then if it's a longer project, obviously if it's a 90-day thing, don't worry about it. But if you've got a 2-year project, periodically review the contract and this list of deliverables to make sure that you're in compliance. Next page. Same kind of thing as we've been talking. Take advantage of the technology to make the job easier. Use Outlook, use Contract Manager, use whatever note-keeping software you like that gets you information. And this is an important thing. Contract administration needs to be empowered to monitor contract requirements and push compliance. Don't put someone to the side, oh yeah, I know, I need to do that, but I'm not going to get to it right now. I've got bigger fish to fry. If Wendy or someone else is constantly reminding you, it's got to be important. So we need to be, again, in contract compliance. Technology to keep daily logs, reports, it's all there. And if there's a better way to do it that you come across, let's talk about it. We're always trying to improve in that regard. Before commencing work on a project, this is just some last-minute advice on change management, change relating to change orders, of course, scope changes, things of that nature. Make a list of who has the authority to authorize a change on the owner's side, good thing to do at the kickoff meeting, and on our side for subcontractors. Again, document all the changes. Written acknowledgement from an owner's representative. So, oh, gee, we're going to have to tear that concrete out and do it again. We did it according to plans and specifications, but it's not working. Obviously, there's a problem there. Apparently, it's not our problem. You need to get written. We'll tear it out, get it done as soon as you can, preferably at the moment. Written acknowledgement, signature, that they acknowledge that this is a change. There's a forthcoming change order. We don't have to have necessarily, we like approved change orders before we do the work. It's not living in the real world. But written acknowledgement is a requirement of some form, preferably with a signature, because emails, they're recognized, but if there's no signature, sometimes it falls into doubt. Try to get preliminary costs to the owner. If you've got scope altering change orders, again, signature before you do the work. Customary practice, oral promises, friendly nature of the client. We've been going to lunch together, 3 times a week during the whole project. They'll take care of me. When you're on 2 different sides of the table and attorneys are involved, nobody becomes friends. It can blow pretty quickly. So
I'm your boss. Just say, sorry, company makes me do this. I wouldn't. But they make me.
This is important for subcontract management. Being licensed in the jurisdiction of the project. Until 3 months ago, I would have said in the state, but we learned, Wayne and Wendy, that jurisdiction is the issue. It's not even just counties, it's cities, right? Sometimes. So, licensed in the jurisdiction of where you're doing work. Insurance coverages. Often we're used to seeing certificates of insurance coverage and going, oh, okay, this is proof of insurance. It's apparent, according to the attorneys, apparent proof of insurance. Unless we have a long-running track record with that subcontractor, we're advised to get a deeper level of proof, a copy of the actual insurance contract that they have. Mm-hmm. Somebody like GSL, give me some other examples, people we work with all the time, there's them sending in the summary. Somebody new or doubtful, take that next step, they advise.
We have to do that with Tom's tax.
Can we discuss that a minute?
Yeah.
We are amending, but I can't think, and there may have been, but where we'll do a $20 million project versus they go on a certificate of insurance from us is proof that coverage. Is that somehow in question? Or, I mean, have we been getting the whole copies of the policies? And it just seems to me if we get that, why get it if we're not going to read them? And who in here's got that kind of expertise? So I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. And I'm asking you a question.
Well, this is in reference to subcontract.
Right. But same, I mean, I use that example, an owner.
The presentation that I attended, the example given was easy to manipulate a document that maybe last year you had full coverage.
Oh yeah, I do it all the time.
And with certain software, they can adjust dates. And
I guess I'm suggesting we really dig into that a little more because if we're saying a certificate of insurance isn't it, what proof of it, what is? I guess is my question. It's a very important issue.
The insurance,
not brushing it off.
The insurance contract that they have with their insurer, a copy, is what they recommend we ask for.
And then we provide it to whom? Because Senior's right.
It's for us.
Right. But do we review it, or do we give it to Dale Barton to review? Do we give it to somebody to say this too is in order?
I'd probably give it to Dale.
I just don't know how you get an original certificate of insurance that's got an original signature, that's got some organization stamping it as form, and I've been away from it a long time, and to argue that that's not proof of insurance, to me that's more of a proof. If you had a copy of an insurance contract and they hadn't paid their premium, they can't get a certificate of insurance, for example. To me, the certificate trumps a contract to purchase insurance.
Tell them how.
There's a difference between an application for a driver's license and getting the driver's license.
Wouldn't it be where it comes from? I mean, if you're getting it from a contractor that you think might be shady and he gives you a photocopy of it, that's one thing. But if it comes from directly from their insurance agent with an original signature on it, then
my understanding is that, and there's a requirement for cancellation. So,
right.
So if you get that from,
if it comes from
an insurance agent, it's an original, not some photostat copy. But to me, that's what you want. That's what you're going to go back and rely on and say, hey, and there's a, what is it, 10 or 20 days notice requirement typical. If somebody gives you a certificate, that company is obligated to, for the sub to inform us if it's canceled. That's a sign that they've got a contract. I'm just suggesting you maybe ask Bart a little more about that because I'll bet 80% of the time we're dealing with, or at least more than half, with new subcontractors we haven't worked with before. And so are we going to go ask for their insurance contract? I don't know. Anybody can doctor up a contract. A certificate that's original is really, to me, is kind of like a bond, if you will. We ought to dig into that. It's all I'm suggesting.
That's fine. They just said that that's the recommendation. So we can do.
I don't even know what an insurance contract is.
All that gobbledygook they send you in the mail that you
Well,
never
okay,
get.
that's a policy. But
that's what they are asking for. So we get a copy of the
when you need a copy of your auto policy, do you sign it?
No.
No. So to me, that's not a contract. That's all. I'm confused with the terminology here. So
the concern again was just that they can doctor that one-page document that is issued by a court
certificate.
That's easily done. And that's been happening now because of increasing subcontractor default for the last 4 years, and their recommendation is in some way, manner, whether it's the contract or some other way, get
Call their carrier.
Yeah, that's what I was
That's
going to
very
say.
good. I
Just
was
call their
thinking of that.
carrier.
Confirm that they sent the certificate. It would probably be
And that it's
simple.
current.
The next thing is put requirements in the subcontracts that relate whom email documentation should be sent in that particular project based on the assignments made by the project manager. Sometimes there's people that certain things are supposed to be sent to. Often the subs will assume they need to send it to whoever signed the contract or who they were dealing with. And if you don't want that person getting that documentation, make it clear. And then finally, there's some new lien release verbiage required by the state of Utah. I went to go to the website today to print it off as the second exhibit we were going to use, and that particular web page was down. So we'll be looking for that. So Utah's always changing stuff related to subcontractor affairs and law and documentation and notice, and so and we're on top of that. But Utah is known as one of the states that's always messing with its laws related to that.
Yeah, and marriage and alcohol.
Last module here before we open it up to questions is related to best practices in project scheduling. Most of this comes from a lunch activity we had a few months ago with project analysts. Perform an as-built schedule alongside the baseline schedule. Kind of keep saving as on both of them. It's important to make it official at the right time, the schedule, before anybody assumes things, because schedules are being manipulated, changed based on changing information and pushing completion dates out, and people make assumptions about the last schedule they saw, even if it's a pro forma schedule, if you will. If activities push out the completion dates, make sure you show that visually on the schedule. The milestones that indicate a change in sequence, if it's dictated by the owner. But there's details on here. We don't need to go into too many of them, but the big picture is the schedule. Make sure the change order is signed, finally approved, before a new schedule that is referenced in the change order becomes official. Don't let anybody assume anything, because that causes a lot of problems. Can. And then the other thing is just visually, we have the tools of the software to show changes as they're occurring, proposed changes, recommended courses of action that affect the schedule. Show that visually with the bar charts as much as possible for those of you who are able to manage schedules that way. Last and most important thing about scheduling that these lawyers had to say was always submit the schedule for approval. Often, most of the time, they won't. They'll ignore it. They recommend you just do it anyway. Just make sure there's a letter that says, attached is the proposed schedule based on the conversation we had yesterday, today, whatever, for your approval, signed project manager. That is a huge weapon in a claim situation to have submitted that. Well, did you ever share it? Because often they'll deny, they never shared the schedule with me, they never communicated with us on the schedule. They controlled it. And so that's the basis for a lot of problems, which is...
Of course, the other side of the coin, the owners and engineers and who are running those projects have been coached the other way. You don't sign anything, so don't send it back. So you don't plan on getting it.
Right. But if we send it, nobody can claim it.
Yeah. Hey, go back to that previous slide where it talks, was that about baselines piece? Baseline schedule. What was that? Do not modify baseline schedule until a change order is approved. I'm not questioning that.
What that's saying is there's an official, let's say it's the first schedule, the approved schedule that everybody's going from. Then there's a delay situation. Well, we don't know what's happening here. We haven't gotten it resolved, but we're inputting information into a schedule. This is a save as situation. Don't save over the baseline until the change order is approved. Say, oh, here's the new schedule. You're going to have to baseline and the most current rendition is what the recommendation is. that makes sense.
Yeah, the question was one on, for example, the huge delay job we've had over the last few years is, of course, green energy. And I'm wondering if they've done that. That's a side note we might ask.
Right. We'll follow up with everybody on this topic. Is there another page, Michelle? I don't think
We went over it.
Anybody have any questions? Anything related to these topics that wasn't covered that they wonder about, or suggestions for the group?
Which software, if you know, does project analysts use for, their claim digger or when they develop claim schedules? Do you know if it's a Primavera?
When they were in here, that's Primavera is what John was a P6.
Wouldn't surprise me. In fact, you're right, you did say that because I specifically asked about the Microsoft program. Sometimes our owners want to use that, and we recommend you stay as far away from that software as possible, unless it's mandated by the contract. But try to get it changed. It's just not construction oriented.
At what point, switching gears, do our superintendent, daily reports become effective? Because those aren't generally something we share with the owner, but we hold as information on our end. Is that ever admissible because we don't share it?
It's admissible. It's like you say, it's more for our use, really.
I take it that's our personal diary, if we will. We don't have to share it until somebody. It's either to our advantage or we're forced to.
Sure. Okay.
I've seen it be admissible, though.
Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't have asked that because I know it was. I know they're used. They're brought through discovery. I've been,
Back to my drama thing. In this case, we had very good notes in the data reports, which we were arguing the owner knew it. We knew it. We were keeping notes. We were working to solve the problem. The written notice was still required. But my point is, and I would also say, we were told that if you'd have written notice, the data reports are kind of confirming and testifying, if you will, to the written notice. Here's the more detailed deal. John, the inspector, was a jerk and came on the job drunk and wouldn't give us the drawings. Probably wouldn't have put that in the written notice.
probably not.
The deck is stacked against us if we don't document, is basically the upshot. If we haven't done what we say we're going to do contractually and document it, the deck's against it. It's stacked for us with the documentation, is the experience of most construction. When we do this, the benefit of the doubt will come to us. And so I think in a situation where, well, what do the daily reports say? Well, they indicate this, but the meeting minutes don't, or whatever. At least you've got something. It tends to fall the other way. So really, he who documents it, as we've seen on here.
And see, I don't mind sharing my daily reports with the owner, simply because you send them to him with the reports. You have this test performed, the compaction test, who was on site, who your subs were, and you've copied them with that. They can't ever say, you didn't ever say anything. We did too. We copied you on these daily reports. We notified you that the compaction test passed. On this date, you still didn't have this. We list on there that we're still missing these drawings. We need this RFI answered. I make them put that on the daily reports, and I give them to the owner. Then he can dispute them. It's the same as your meeting notes, I think. Mm-hmm. To me, I think it's a good tool.
Daily notes, so they also come back and haunt you on their
but
side.
Your superintendents are trained not to put things on there. Bill Franklin showed up today drunk and came in with, that kind of stuff.
That's the focus on this issue.
Yeah,
That's a different non-compliance issue.
That's a different set of minutes.
Yeah.
Or that's
so I don't mind sharing them. And when there's stuff that I don't want them to know, I make the superintendent do a separate data report that he turns in and keeps record of. If there's stuff that's QT, we don't list on there that we were supposed to get a load of pipe today, but we didn't receive it. We wait until we get it, and then we say, received load of pipe on this date. You know, verbiage has to be carefully worded.
Absolutely. So estimators probably know, okay, so how does this fizzle up? Well, are there any situations where documentation could have helped you in the past as far as people following through on quotes and that sort of thing? Probably not too many legal ramifications, but as far as, you know, well, I never promised you I was going to, oh, yes, you did.
Yeah.
Then,
There's a lot of vendors that
so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of benefits from following some of these principles and even other areas that don't necessarily have to do with the project.
So do you think, because we have a boilerplate subcontract agreement, should we add a paragraph that allows us to indicate the points of contact? Because that's not something I write into the scope of work description, you know what I mean?
Could you also do that at the kickoff meeting with the owner? Because it seems to me they're often going to change that as opposed to trying to get that out of. You may not even know who's been assigned to that project and who's going to be copied to throw that into an agreement.
It sure seems like
Then
it
it
could change
change.
often. Yeah, we
I would
can
also
start.
think, I would also think that that point of contact would be identified at the subcontractor pre-kickoff meeting at the job site. It might be a part of the checklist. I don't know that.
In a general note, tell me if you disagree with this, Mike, but if you're not sure, whoever signed that subcontract agreement is the person you send the notice to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. But on our end, as we issue subcontracts, we pretty much know that Wendy's the contract manager and the PM is this and the superintendent is that. We may not know from the sub side when we issue it who their points of contact are, but
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when I get ready to write a subcontract, I send, whether it be the estimator that gave me the bid for it or what, I send him, the person I've been contacting, to please supply me a list of contacts. And that's what I put on the, and that, you know, whose name should I put on your subcontract for signature and who's our contact person, you know.
And I guess, and this is common sense, and maybe we covered it, forgive me if we did, but the reverse goes, in other words, we also give written notices to subs that don't perform, obviously, and it's the same rules, and in that case, I'd say we're the owner, we should be proactive, and as soon as we know an owner's subs delaying this, we don't wait 12 days, we send it that day, or it should be within 24 hours of a subcontractor cause delay.
Yeah, the quicker the better. Some of the things that aren't habit here or policy that are new, and there are some things, definitely, we'll follow up on. We'll make it official to communicate that. But part of it, you know, it was an educational thing, but it's also to discuss the viability of doing some of these things, the effectiveness, and if there's any big concerns, and I think we'll hear as far as following up on insurance, but I think we can do an alternative way that's easier for everybody rather than having to learn how to read insurance contracts. Dave, do you have anything to add? I was want to make sure I give Dave the last word.
Come on, Dave.
Could you talk to my wife, please?
Thanks for coming.
And if you guys can come into my office and tell me what the 3 parts are of this presentation that we went over, I'll give you something, Bodo. See who was paying attention. So there's 3 parts.
what do you have to offer? Hats, T-shirts?
Such a real problem.
And if you can help me with a spelling error in one of those,
I can already
I already know
that.
it. I will get you something else.
I was very kindly for it to be just above the part that said spell check.
I know, but it was intentional, Dave.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was intentional. I love that.
Are you going to share the PowerPoint?